I typically only watch things that are highly violent if they are really, truly pinnacles of storytelling, and I am so grateful that I watched this because this show, we don't get like such a masterpiece in writing very often, and it just like lit my soul up to see such a beautiful script come to life. Hello and welcome to Embodying Mystical Mac. I'm Mac. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. Today we are going to be discussing something that I was hoping to be discussing in a different way, but now we're gonna have to discuss it this way, and that is Shōgun, the show on Hulu, well, FX, but you know, in partnership with Hulu like they do. And they're very surprising, in my opinion, and I'll discuss why it's surprising, decision to go into season 2 and make this a drama as opposed to a limited series. Okay, let's just get into it. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, what is Shōgun? Shōgun is this incredible adaptation of a book by an author by the name of James Clavell, and I've actually listened to the book. It's very good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The writing was very good. Like, I completely understand why it stood the test of time. I actually want to get the hardcover edition that they've put out recently with the artwork from the show. It's like a really badass cover with Tornaga on the front, and it's really sick, but I want to get it because it's the only version where the book isn't split into 2 books. I listened to it separately. I listened to book 1 and then to book 2, and in my opinion, this is one of the best adaptations. If there were to be a master class on how to adapt a written work, such as a novel, and granted this is historical fiction, but still, historical fiction. So if there was a masterclass on how to adapt a novel into a visual medium, such as a show, they should use Shōgun as one of the prime examples, because it genuinely was absolutely brilliant. So Shōgun, the book and the show is based off of the journey of this Japanese daimyo by the name of Yoshi Toranaga and his journey to becoming Shōgun. Now, in the Sengoku period, which is when this takes place, there was always upheaval in Japan. Like, Japan was in consistent upheaval because there were all these daimyos, these Japanese warlords, fighting for land, fighting for power, and while there was an emperor and a family, like a dynasty, that held down the emperor title, the title of Shōgun was given to essentially like the undefeated warlord. So while the emperor was more like a figurehead, the shogun would actually have ultimate control over the realm. And this story is based on the very real rise of, and I wrote these names down to make sure that I pronounce them correctly, the very real rise of Tokugawa Ieyasu. So that's who Yoshi Toranaga is based off of. Now, to add intrigue and, you know, drama to the story, and in real life this actually happened, the character of Blackthorn, who is the Englishman who ends up in Japan, he was based off of William Adams, who later became Miwara Anjin, and he was the first Englishman, I believe, to step foot on Japanese soil. So this entire story is this interesting blend of tales, right, of Blackthorn's experience coming to Japan and becoming acclimated to the culture and even thoroughly accepted into it, Toranaga's political prowess and his schemes and plots, and how they measure up against the schemes and plots of the other daimyos. You have Toda Mariko, which is a phenomenal character, and she is based off of Hosokawa Gracia, who was a very well-revered noble lady during this time, and she was actually like one of the very few noble women to have adopted Catholicism, and hence her name being Gracia. She was baptized under that name and given that name. Essentially, the story of from the moment that Blackthorn lands in Japan up until Toranaga's victory to become shogun is essentially set in stone. I don't want to give too much away because I do believe that people should watch this. This is not necessarily a review of Shōgun. This is just me talking about what I loved about it and why I think that greenlighting a season 2 and even 3. I read like an article where someone was saying that they greenlit season 2 and 3. Why I personally believe that that is not a good idea. Okay, so given everything that I just said about Shōgun, it's absolutely such a as close to perfect adaptation as I believe they could have gotten. In that one season, they were able to put this giant book into the show from beginning to end in season 1. I listened to the book. Both parts were like 26 to 29 hours each. Oh my goodness. And I listen at like 1.5 speed usually. And yeah, it's an intense book. And the fact that they were able to put it into one season is very, 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 very impressive. But this, to highlight my issue, they managed to put the entire book into that first season. Now, when writers run out of source material, I get a little scared, right? It happened with Game of Thrones season 8, maybe even some of season 7, I don't remember, but definitely season 8. It happened with 13 Reasons Why, right? That basically seasons 2 through the end had no source material behind it. You know, the book only served for that first season, and that first season, in my opinion, is the most successful season. I know, lots of criticisms about the show, just, you know, when we're looking at all the seasons. I'm not saying it was a good show, I'm just saying that one season where they had source material was the most cohesive. And so, while it's an interesting thing because I can say that they don't have enough source material to go off of, but that wouldn't be entirely true. They simply just don't have enough source material as far as James Clavell's story is concerned. Because, without spoiling much, while Toranaga's victory is pretty much secure, and we know that leaving the season, we don't necessarily get to see him become shogun. But part of the show, that's part of the whole thing, okay? I don't want to like spoil anything, but it doesn't detract at all. It's actually, it just builds more intrigue, which is part of why I can understand them perhaps wanting to capitalize on it. But the thing is that James Clavell took a very long time, I imagine, to research the people he was talking about. I mean, damn near everybody in the show of importance has a real life counterpart, like just to give you perspective, right? Blackthorn, I already said, he's named after William, or he's based after William Adams. Yoshi Toranaga, Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ishido, he's based after Ishida Mitsunari. Lady Ochiba is based after Yorodono. Yaemon, the heir, is based after Toyotomi Hideyori. Lady Mariko, I already said, Hosokawa Gracia. And then Buntaro, her husband, Hosokawa Tadaoki. That's just a short list of the people who have real-life counterparts in this story. And so while I could say, like, oh, they don't have enough source material, which in part that's true. They don't have any more, like, it's been somewhat researched and cohesively put together for them source material. They do have plenty of source material to pull from history. Now, the thing that scares me is that, as I previously mentioned, James Clavell likely spent quite a long time researching these people and these wars and these political climates and circumstances. And for them to put out a season 2 and 3, I just doubt they're gonna have nearly as much time to put into researching the things that could create a cohesive story for us based on the history of the events that were to follow the events of season 1 and the end of the book, Shōgun. While I don't necessarily think it's doomed for sure, like, I definitely give them the benefit of the doubt, I'm still feeling a bit of anxiety for the fact that if it were to be left alone, like if we were to just leave it alone, even for like a couple years, Shōgun season 1 would have had a chance to be, in my opinion, immortalized a little bit as this beautiful, top-of-the-line adaptation. And then, you know, given that the intrigue continued after a couple of years, a few years, coming back to it and trying to forge a season 1 or season 2 and 3. I would understand that more. I feel like the way that they're pushing forward with this, it feels a lot like executives trying to push, and we've seen in multiple pieces of media, like so much of Disney's theatrical releases lately, such as Wish is what I'm, not necessarily all of them, because Elemental was fire, but that was Pixar as well. Regardless, like, you know, a lot of what Disney's been kind of doing along the lines of Wish, probably what this Moana 2 movie is going to be like, probably what this Mufasa movie is going to be like, so many of their live actions, so much of what Marvel has done, like, it just feels like there's, like, these little tempering hands from executives, and it just, in my opinion, it kind of has the same vibe, this, like, pushing Shōgun to do seasons 2 and 3 already. It's like, just focus on season 2, like, take a second, like, this history is so complex, and and not only did James Clavell, you know, research this and whatnot, he was able to put it into a book, which, when you're doing something like a book as opposed to a screenplay, you're afforded a lot more detail and a lot more immersion than you are with a screenplay, where you have to kind of get to the point right away. I believe when an adaptation is done right, it can be done so right. It's because the creators of the screenplay have this sort of guidebook to go off of in the form of the source material that is immersive, that allows them to feel the world that they are being exposed to and then have to translate to a screenplay. So I'm just unsure that it will have the same gravity and the same written prowess. Not that I don't believe that the scripts will be top-notch, because they really did prove that they can create top-notch scripts. It's that I'm not sure how they're going to go, given that they don't have any form of, like, organized source material aside from historical research to go forth on. Now, I could argue, because there is a monologue at the end of the book that's very similar to the monologue that Yoshi Toranaga gives at the end of the show, of season 1 of the show. And in the book, it's much longer. And in the book, there are quite a few things that, you know, could, in my opinion, be translated into things that we will see later and that kind of thing. There might be a crumb or two from the source material that they can pull. For the most part, the things that I find that they could make really interesting and exciting, they are scattered in the real history that these characters are based off of. In conclusion, as I said before, I give them the benefit of the doubt. They did absolutely phenomenally I am always thrilled when I get to learn more about Japanese culture, because I don't know if y'all know this, but I am part Japanese, and it's always really exciting when I get to learn about culture, about that culture, my culture, because I didn't really learn a lot at all about it growing up. Like, the most I had was, you know, anime and whatever I could learn from, you know, random encounters with people and things like that. And so it was really cool to be able to learn about what that time was like in this way. I saw a lot of behind the scenes footage, and I really appreciated how they truly cared to make the world come alive. And I say this as if it's fictional, it's obviously not, but make that historical world come alive. I was so fascinated by the politics and the social etiquettes and norms and things, and you know, while some of it is all very harsh and horrific, much like in Western culture, it's still very interesting to examine like how humans used to be, and especially in parts of the world that we aren't fully familiar with. And even though I am part Japanese, I'm still learning about that aspect of my culture. And I applaud them for even deciding to make the show mostly in Japanese. I thought that was amazing. As much as I don't love reading subtitles, when it comes to live action things, I do always want to give it a chance. And when I say live action things, typically for anime, I'm a dub girl all the way, as cringy as it might be. For me, anime is about the visual. I really want to focus on that. However, when it's live action stuff, you know, I want to give the foreign projects their due. And while this was, you know, not necessarily a foreign project, I believe that their choice to honor the Japanese culture so far as to even not compromise and cast phenomenal Japanese actors that now are going to be on our radar. Also, honor the fact that so much of James Clavell's book is watching Blackthorn immerse himself into this culture and learn to appreciate it. And I believe that in choosing to make the show mostly Japanese, they were allowing us to do that as well. I've always thought Japanese was a really cool language. I never before this understood that it's actually, to me, a really beautiful language. And like all the poetry and everything, I just thought they really hit the nail on the head. And while I'm ambivalent, I'm still rather curious to see what seasons 2 and 3 will bring. So bring them on, I guess. Let me know what y'all thought about Shōgun, if you have seen it. If you haven't, let me know what you've heard about it. I typically only watch things that are highly violent if they are really, truly pinnacles of storytelling, and I am so grateful that I watched this, because this show, we don't get like such a masterpiece in writing very often, and it just like lit my soul up to see such a beautiful script come to life. And then I was pushed to read the book basically because after the show was done, I was like, I want more. I know that this book is giant. I know that it's gonna give me so much more, and it did. And the romance is everything to me. It's not very present in the show. You get glimpses of it, but in the book, it's there, and it's beautiful, and anyways, now I'm just gonna gush about Shōgun, but thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. If you've made it this far, please consider liking the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and please consider clicking that bell, because I post regularly, but I don't post on a schedule. All 3 or any of them help the algorithm with my channel, or rather help my channel with the algorithm, and I'm very appreciative of any and all or none of those actions that you do. So I'm just really happy that you're here. Thank you for that. If you are here right now, let's comment a fan emoji. I feel like the fan emoji exists, and there was a lot of fans, and I learned that in the book it was because by fanning yourself you can kind of keep like the mosquitoes away and things like that. So Yeah, let's comment the fan emoji. You can also find me on social media. I'm at Embodying Mystical Mac. I also have a music account called at Mac in the Music, if you want to check that out. If you're also inclined to support the channel, below you'll find my Venmo, you will find a link, or rather, yes, my email for you to book a tarot reading. You'll also find my affiliate link, and yeah, lastly, I'm just so grateful that you're here. I really appreciate it. It's been an adjustment with a bigger workload schedule to be able to still get content out, and I'm really grateful for the trailer reactions, but I was really happy to just sit down and chat with you about Shōgun and the potentials of season 2 and 3. So thank you so much. I will catch you next time, and stay mystical, stay grounded. Mwah.